gamers, Power Word Heal here, and today we're doing something a little bit different. So we're actually going to do an MC boss by boss video, and this is going to be, it's meant to be like a quick video where we just kind of go through the boss encounters, and I'm going to be kind of telling you what I do for each boss, specifically tips and stuff like that, and how to heal each boss as a priest, and the various things you can do. I was going to do this like individual bosses for each video, but I don't think there'd be enough content. So I'm just going to do it all together, and we'll do one of these for every instance. And I thought it'd be kind of a good time to do it since the OnlyFans thing is kind of happening. So, hey, maybe if anybody's looking for a boss guide, a quick little guide on how to do some bosses, you can kind of check this out. So first boss is Lucifron, and as a priest, in my opinion, your job on this is basically to just dispel. Now, shamans can dispel as well in this fight, and we're talking about the mind control when we're talking about dispel, because that's the thing that's going to kill people, right? Basically, Lucifron will actually Lucifron's ads cast a mind control that controls a player, and the big problem is that there tends to be a decent amount of melee in all these raids now. Like, my raid has a ton of melee, because we're kind of like a tryhard guild, but even if your guild's not super tryhard, you'll have enough melee, and they all tend to be in the same spot because they're melee, they can only be in one spot. So what'll happen is if a melee gets mind controlled, and the other ones are cleaving, using blade flurry, stuff like that, they can instantly kind of splat to the damage that's going on, because now they're an additional target that these people can be hitting with their cleave abilities. So you want to dispel them as quickly as possible. And shamans can do this too, like I said, but typically shamans are asked to heal in the fight, and it's priests that are tasked with dispelling. If you're on alliance side, priests have to dispel, because there's not another class that can do like a harmful dispel of magic, right? Paladins can cleanse debuffs from people that are friendly, but they can't cleanse debuffs from people that are like harmful, so it has to be the priest on alliance side. But anyway, basically, so what you'll see here is we're going to engage the boss, right? And I have a macro, and I'll put a link to the macro in the description. I did a whole video about it, and you basically just spam the macro. This is very easy when you're standing behind the melee clump, and you'll note my positioning. Okay, so I'm running in. This is the melee clump right here, right where my cursor is. And I'm running in. I think I got some pre-shields off, and I'm trying to get in position immediately to start the dispel. Okay, so we're basically in position. We're right behind the melee clump, and there's other priests doing this as well. I think there's one here. There might be one in this clump. It's hard to see right now, but okay, so we're behind the melee, and it's very important that you don't go too far. So you don't want to go into the melee, right? Because if you go into the melee, you have a chance of getting mind controlled as well, and if you get mind controlled, you'll just instantly die. You can't really, there's no point for you to be on the melee, because you don't need to be in the melee, right? So we're just kind of waiting, right? And you see this is actually Dominate Mind on Chronic, it says, okay? So he's mind controlled and already dispelled, it looks like, because we're just spamming the macro. So we're literally just standing here, and you can see it's saying nothing to dispel, nothing to dispel. It's because I'm just spamming the macro, and I'm standing right behind the clump. Okay, and a couple things with how this macro works. See how he got dominated minded and he got dispelled? So the reason why it worked in this case, and this priest actually got it and not me, was because this priest is behind him. How the macro works is it acquires a target, and then it does the dispel. So the target has to be in an acquirable range, and to me that seems like it has something to do with like nameplate distance. It's probably nameplate distance as well as your character's orientation. So they have to be facing the character that's mind controlled in order to actually acquire the target to then use the purge for the macro to like fully work. So that's why my macro didn't get this guy, and this priest macro probably did, because he's right in front of this guy, right? So if this guy wasn't here and I needed to dispel this guy, I just 180, or like, you know, I turn it a 90 degree, I guess, in this case, to face him, and then I'll be able to get the dispel, but it wasn't necessary here because one of our other priests was already on it. So just staying behind, spamming. And the thing is, it's most important that you're focused on the melee, right? Because if somebody in the range gets mind controlled, it's just not the biggest deal, because, you know, they're not getting cleaved down, essentially, right? And that's the main danger. So that's how you do that boss. If you're not on this type of, like, I think this is the most important thing you should be doing, right? Is just spamming the dispel macro. However, if you have other people already doing this, right, then the next best thing you could be doing is dispelling the debuff that goes out. If we rewind just like a second here, right, you can see this magic debuff. This basically does like 2k damage or something like that, 3k damage. And the more of them you dispel, just the easier it is. A lot of times the fight is over before this has an opportunity to make like a big negative impact. But it just saves mana, right? It's easier to dispel somebody for like 100 and something mana than to let the thing go off and then have to heal them for like 2 to 3k. So if you're not dispelling the mind controls, you should be dispelling the normal magic debuff. And the reason why, if I'm dispelling the mind controls, I don't like to dispel the normal debuff is because the mind control casts go out very quick, and sometimes you can actually be caught in the global cooldown dispelling one of these magic debuffs. And if you're caught in the global cooldown while you dispel one of these magic debuffs, you don't start you can't start your purge and the mind control as quickly as you normally could, right? And that can actually cost somebody their life because that's how quick the damage goes out on a fight like this. So I don't even like to chance it. It's just not worth it in my opinion to even bother. What I'll sometimes do is, like, a lot of times the mind controls come out in pairs, and if they do come out in pairs, it's usually a little bit for him to cast, for the ads to cast them again. So if they come out in pairs and you get them both, or you get one, somebody gets another, then after that you can dispel these other types of debuffs for like a little bit, but you really want to eventually just get back to spamming your macro, right? Because that's the way to keep people completely safe. So yeah, this is Lucifron, very easy boss. You can also do pre-shield on the way in. You just typically don't pre-shield the tank. But, yeah. So we'll go to Magmadar now. Let's skip a little bit through. Okay. Oops. Okay. So I think the boss is like just starting here anyway. Okay, yeah. So we'll pull here, and I'll just show you what I do for Magmadar. So Magmadar, couple things. A lot of people, if you're doing this quickly, they're gonna have these bleed debuffs on them. So you want to watch these people when they're going in. If the tank has a lot of bleed debuffs, it can be a little sketchy sometimes, because if they tick, like, you want to be careful, because if you heal him too early, like if he ticks down, like, so he's got a little bit minus HP and he's like right here, right, and then you heal him and he's already made contact with the boss, but he gets like a parry or something, or a miss, then what might happen is the boss might just like run to you. And it's not like the biggest deal in the world, but it does kind of mess up the positioning, because like most likely somebody's going to be able to get it before it gets to you, especially if you fade. So that's not really the issue. It's more just like the movement kind of throws everything off, and now they have to drag it back, and the boss also fears quickly after he's pulled. So there's a bunch of problems there. So you don't want to be healing too quickly if these debuffs cause a bit of a problem, but you do need the heal to hit pretty much after he's made contact and has solid contact with the boss, right? Because the boss actually does hit reasonably hard, and when they have this bleed on top of them as well, it can be a bit of a concern. So it also seems to be like one of those bosses that it can thrash potentially. Sometimes it often does a lot of damage right off the pull. I don't like to pre-shield the tank for this, because it's usually not enough damage that I'm like really that concerned. And as long as I'm pre-casting a heal, I can deal with the damage, right? So what you're going to see me do is you're going to see me follow our tank in, and we're kind of moused over there. I'm just healing somebody else, and it looks like he's kind of fine. So I was like looking for a second. He made first contact. He didn't really get blasted, so I was like fine. So yeah, you want to stay with the tank going in just to make sure he doesn't get completely annihilated, right? And you're in range to be able to heal and shield if needed after he's made contact. And then once he's made contact and everything seems to be kind of good, I pull out, okay? So I start running back, you see? And I actually resist the fear here, if you noticed, because I didn't run back far enough. But what you should be doing is you should run in, okay? Make sure you're healing the tank, right? Then sometimes I'll even toss like a bubble on him as I fade out, if I'm the one healing him. And I'll fade out to line of, to range the fear, because the fear is like, I think, a 30-yard range. So you can actually get out of the range, And then what basically happens is you see all these people get feared. Tremor takes care of the people over here usually, but what you want to be doing is spamming dispels on all these people that have the fear debuff. You can see the panic, right? So you go in, stay with the tank, make sure he's okay, dip out, then come back in and start dispelling fears. Obviously, you still want to be watching the tank as well. So we're just dispelling fears right now. I think that one actually got caught in GCD. So I'm just dispelling fears. This is a fight where if you're like doing this sort of thing, like dispelling fears, not many people dispel fears in this fight. They don't dip out to come back in. So usually, there'll be plenty of people healing the tank, right? So you don't really have to worry too much about dispelling other people's fears and not healing the tank, because usually there's only one person to heal pretty much in this fight. I mean, other people do start taking damage, but there's really not that much healing overall, so you're pretty safe to get those dispels off. The one case you have to worry is if a lot of like tank healers and stuff get feared, I guess. You know what I mean? But usually the shaman are at least in range of their own tremor, so they usually break it pretty quickly, so it's usually not really that much of a problem, right? So yeah, that's basically what we do here, and then we just kind of like stay in range. In my guild, this guy dies before he gets into the fear, but you may have to line the fear again. I don't have a DBM on right now, but it's possible you get timers. So if you get timers, just kind of like walk out. A lot of times timers in this game are not exact. So what that means is that they'll tell you when the ability can be used, but not necessarily, the boss isn't necessarily going to use it at that point, right? So what that means is like, if it says like fear in 20 seconds, once that timer reaches 0, he can now fear any time after that. So that's around the time where you want to be rebacking out. Alternatively, if you're a Will of the Forsaken, if you're undead, you can just Will of the Forsaken, especially the second fear, because I feel like it's easier to just LOS the first fear, because you're kind of less caught up in what you're doing. The fight's just starting, and obviously you might be healing a bunch of people, you might be a little bit distracted when the second fear goes off, so that's where something like Will of the Forsaken can come in clutch. So we'll just skip to the next boss here, which is going to be, I believe, Gehennas. Okay, so we're right in front of Gehennas. I think we're going to do a rage mob here, or we might go right into boss, it looks like. Yeah, we're going right into boss. I can tell by the way they're looking. What are they going to do? Fire Lord. Oh, okay, they did do Fire Lord, okay. Okay, so what I'll usually try and do for this boss is, this is a boss where pre-shields are huge. Now again, you don't necessarily want to pre-shield the tank. This is a fight where I feel like the ads don't hit super hard. So usually I don't have an issue with like other people getting, like the main tank or whatever, getting hit by all the ads at once and taking a ton of damage. This is a fight where it's pretty easy, it seems like, for people to get their targets, because everybody's usually fapped, which means that they have the free action potion to prevent them from getting stunned. So all the people who are getting an ad can do that pretty easily. So usually what I'll do is I'll pre-shield like the damage warriors, or the ones that are tanking an ad that's not going to take like direct damage, essentially, right? And try and get as many of those out as possible. Because we do fast clears, it's oftentimes hard for me to get a ton of pre-shields out, but you can get a lot more than this. You see I have like 3 out. You can have like way more. Some of these people are already pre-shielded from other priests as well. So yeah, you just pre-shield, and then you immediately want to be focusing on people that you know are like tanks that are tanking an ad in this fight, as well as just getting more pre-shields out. So like you can get pre-shields out before the boss actually goes in, and then you can continue pre-shielding when nobody's taken damage, right? Just to get some extra shields out. You notice that the tank takes a lot of damage here, so I'm mousing over to cast shield. I think he already had Weakened Soul on him from somebody else, and they get the dispel on him really quick. This curse right here makes it so that your healing is reduced by 75%. So just keep that in mind when you're healing people. It's not necessarily wrong to heal somebody with an actual heal that is cursed, right? Because you need to save them sometimes. but your heal is going to be way less effective. And unfortunately, a heal like Flash Heal is already, not a super strong heal in terms of the actual amount it heals for, right? So 75% of even a max rank Flash Heal is probably like, 300, 400 healing. So just be cognizant of that and realize that shields aren't, impacted by that same penalty. So if somebody can be shielded, this is a great time to shield them when they have the debuff, right? So we're just watching the tanks here. And, the boss is already dead, if you can imagine that. But you would basically just watch the tanks, and then you're just trying to pick up melee that, if they have the debuff, you shield them. If they don't have the debuff, you spam Flash Heal, and you're trying to get the ones that are taking damage, right? That either have threat, or they're getting hit by the Rain of Fire, etc. So that fight is just basically pre-shields and finding the targets that can actually be healed. Pretty simple fight. The pre-shields do like so much work on that one. We'll kind of just skip ahead. Like in a guild like this guild, it's like the players are pretty good. They do a lot of damage, so you could see the fight wasn't even a threat regardless. But the problem is like in a guild where the damage isn't as good, right? Having all the pre-shields on before really does help and makes the fight that much smoother. Also lets people kind of get settled in. They're not like panicking right off the bat because they lost a ton of health. And as long as you get the pre-shields out early enough, most people, like the weakened soul isn't lasted that long, right? So you can immediately get another shield on them when even more damage comes in. So this is going to be Garr. This fight, it kind of depends on how you're doing the strategy. We do a strategy where one tank tanks all the ads, another tank tanks Garr. So I think the I Am Brian guy is the one who tanks all the ads. So this is a case where you absolutely shield the tank, because he's going to take so much damage, like, regardless, he's going to have rage. You know what I mean? You just need to make sure he doesn't get one shot, and ideally you want to shield him early. This actually, unfortunately, the shield goes on a little bit late, because what you want is you want this weakened soul debuff to be off of him already by the time he goes in, but still, like, a pre-shield is better than nothing, because you can now be pre-casting on him, right? So you want the pre-shield on, you want weakened soul just to be coming off as he runs in, that way you can shield him again if needed, and you basically just dump all your heals into the tank that's, like, tanking the most amount of ads. If you're doing this in a guild where people are banishing stuff and warriors are individually tanking ads, then don't worry about it too much. Just kind of focus on your assignment. A lot of times guilds like that will pull with like a mage going into ice block. So if that's the case, you can pre-shield the mage before the pull just to give him a little bit of an extra buffer if he messes up. Basically, whoever is going to pull for you, they should have a pre-shield, right? And if they're not doing something like super important, like if they're just off tanking an ad or something and you're killing Garr first, those people can all get pre-shields because, again, their threat is not a super big priority because nobody else is hitting those ads, right? So we go in, he gets a bunch of the ads, right? Somebody pulls threat immediately. So I'm just kind of bouncing around when the hunters get threat. And we're just basically spamming. And this is just kind of like DPS warriors pulling threat. You see, like, we're trying to switch our targets as much as possible. I think that guy has weakened soul. Our mage just like splats instantly there. I actually, that messed up. I missed the shield on that guy, but he ended up living anyway. So, trying to keep the tanks up. I believe I have the southern guy, southern central. But I'm trying to keep it, I'm trying to like keep the I Am Brian guy in my my frame of mind, right? Like, you always want to have all your tanks in mind while healing, especially on a fight like this where a lot of them are being utilized. And then on top of that, you want to have like your warriors that you know are like pumpers and are going to pull threat. So like, I know like this Mikasa is our raid leader, does a ton of damage. AOP does a ton of damage. Berlin Wall does a ton of damage. So these are all people that are in my mind as the pull's going on. and I'm kind of like, I know that at some point these people are taking damage, right? So, yeah, you want to be bouncing between the DPS warriors, but you really want to be also watching your tanks, even if they're not your specific tank. Like, for example, anybody who is going to go in, not only do you want the pre-shield and then have the debuff expire on them so they can get another shield immediately after they go in, but you want to be basically looking out for them the whole fight while they're tanking those ads, right? Even if they're not your responsibility. Because in a lot of these fights in Classic in general, there's just not really a ton of raid damage in boss fights, so you really want to be helping out on tanks as much as you can, even if you're not assigned to a specific tank. So yeah, we're just keeping people back up. And you just want to be careful that you're not near ads on this fight as well. Where you're going to tank, it's kind of hard to give general advice because not everybody does the fight the same way. But a lot of times the ads will be tanked near the wall. So you want to be careful in terms of like where you're standing if you're staying near the wall. But the main place you really don't want to be is you don't want to be like away from the wall but towards the middle of the room. Because if you actually get hit by an ad there, you'll get knocked into, you can potentially get knocked into trash if you didn't clear it all, right? So just something to kind of keep in mind there. And another thing that might be the case for you, I'm just going to go back a little bit, is a lot of times these ads can be tanked along the wall, but what'll happen is they'll tank a clump here, and then they'll bring an ad over to heal somebody, to like finish it essentially, to kill it so it doesn't knock all the melee or whatever. Right, so one thing you have to keep in mind is that if you are healing somebody who's like a tank and is tanking an ad in this clump, right, that's maybe say over here, and then your tank goes to bring the ad over here so we can detonate. If you're over here, right, that's why I'm actually standing over here now, because I originally started, I think, over here, but you have to slide over to ensure that you can hit all of the people tanking over here, right? Because if you just stand over here, you're only going to be able to heal the people that are like in the clump doing damage or tanking in the clump, and anybody that brings the ad over to get it out of the group, now they're going to be vulnerable. And these ads on Garr, if you kill Garr first, the ads enrage, right? So they actually do a lot of damage and they can be really scary. So even a warrior just tanking one ad or something that he's pulled out of the group over here to come over here to be killed, it can really mess him up quite bad and kill him pretty quickly. So you have to be ready to just rotate over to heal a guy that's bringing the ads out. Make sure you always know where your tanks are, basically, right? If you need to, ask your leader to mark, although marks might be in short supply on a fight like this. So that was Garr. Not too bad. Then more trash. And we're at Baron Geddon. Because I think we're about to pull. Okay, so we pull right now. And so usually how this works is you'll have like a stack kind of. This is our guild. We're just, we kind of like free ball it because people know the drill, right? But ideally you would have a stack over here that all the range is in. And if one of the people gets bombed, they go over to this wall. Now, obviously, these spots can be different from your raid, right? You may have a different bomb spot or whatever. But the general concept is the same. You have like a range clump, and you have a spot that has the ball, or that has the bomb. And the reason why you have that spot with the bomb is because what you don't want is you don't want some random people out here, and the bomb guy goes over here to explode, and people get hit, right? So you want to keep the people that are in range away from the people that have the bomb, right? And the easiest way to do that is just make a stack. So you'll probably see us start to stack up, I assume. Yeah, so I'm starting to head towards the side. Just watching the tank as he goes in because there's, no reason not to. Pre-shielding on this fight tends to not be as great. You can still try it, but I never do it on this fight because we pull the boss quickly. But if you had full mana, you could still try it, but usually he doesn't do his AoE for a bit. So it's just not really a big deal. So in this case, the tank gets hit with a bomb, and usually you want to shield the the tank. I'm not the tank healer in this case, though, and I think another priest gets it. I think there's a weaken, yeah, there's a weakened soul on there anyway. In the case of the tank, it kind of depends on how things happen, because if somebody else can get threat, then the tank can run away. But if not, other people have to run away from the tank, right? So it just kind of depends, like, does he have threat or not? And if he has threat, then shielding him is not even really going to help that much, because the shield's probably going to just get evaporated. You could shield right before the bomb goes off. You see how it ticks down? It's at 1 second now, so that'd be the best thing you could do in a situation where the tank gets bombed. But yeah, so basically he just puts this debuff out, the Ignite Mana, and you want to dispel yourself first, dispel all the priests, dispel the shaman. I normally do priests or yourself, then shaman, then druid, then hunter, and then mages is probably the order, right, that you want to do, because warlocks can tap, mages have mana gem and stuff like that, hunters have no way to get mana back, and obviously your druid's your healer. So that's normally the order I would do, but the main thing is you're just, if you get a cleanse on every time your GCD is up on somebody that has mana, you're basically doing the right thing. Just try and prioritize healers first, and then the order of the DPS doesn't really matter that much. But you'll just see I'm basically just going through, cleansing people. Yeah. So I see this guy gets, one of the priests gets bombed, so I shield him. He's running into the corner. And that is that. So pretty simple fight. You just want to shield the bomb target. Then you want to dispel, right? And that's basically the entire fight. If you're doing this in a slower guild, you might get multiple dispel phases. It's pretty normal. Now we'll do Shazzrah. We'll do a lava pack, I guess. Okay, Shazzrah is here. Okay, so I think we're going to pull the boss right now. If we do this other lava pack. Oh, we're getting a rage mob. We love rage mobs. Okay, so this is a fight where you can see there's a bunch of pre-shields out. There's some weakened souls on these people. Pre-shields on these people from me. We had more time in this case, so I was able to get more of them. And if you're in like a casual guild, you can get a ton of these out. And the pre-shields here are amazing because they actually take damage before any of the pots. So if somebody has like a greater arcane pot or something like that, the shield goes off before, so you're preserving the pot, so it lasts even longer. And then they can actually, if they use their pot like early enough, then they can double pot, right? So they can pot during the fight itself if their normal pot wears out. So these, you can actually get like a ton of absorption on Shazzrah's AoE by doing pre-shields beforehand. And you basically just do the pre-shields beforehand, and since there's only one person taking damage that's not taking it from the AoE, which is the tank, you know, you obviously want to be watching him, but as the fight's going on, you can keep pre-shielding people, and y'all notice that, right? So we pull the boss. I'm kind of like deciding if I want to heal or not, or like what I want to do, and I'm casting heals on some people, and when there's nobody to heal, right, nobody to heal for a significant amount, I'm pre-shielding, I'm casting more shields. You notice I heal a pet there. I would not recommend you heal a pet. I healed a pet because I know the boss is dying in like 7 seconds. But if you're doing this and there's like a, you know, there's like a decent chance that the fight lasts like 20-30 seconds, you want to always just be putting globals into the players, right? Like basically you always use more shields even if they're at full health. And because you don't want to ever get behind, because once you get behind in this fight, you can't catch up because the boss just does too much damage. So you want to just ensure that you stay ahead as long as possible by pre-shielding before the pull, and then continuing to shield while the pull is active, basically, until like, you know, like until somebody actually takes damage, and then you put their health back with flash heal. You can also see too, like some people like Paco here and Berlin Wall have the Blood Fury debuff on, like a bunch of these people did. So these people are kind of at this point better shield candidates than heal candidates, right? Because it reduces the healing coming in by 50%. So yeah, Shazzrah is just all about the prep. It's like, do you have potions? Do you have, are you getting pre-shields out? And you just want to get as many pre-shields out as possible, and you preferably want to get them on the melee, because typically you're going to have more melee in your raid than other players. And usually what'll happen is if your raid does have a bunch of ranged players in it, they'll actually be split up in different groups. So the idea is you're trying not to get everybody hit at once, right? Because range can obviously attack the boss from distance, so they don't all need to be in the same place. But the problem with melee is they all have to be in the same place, right, to do damage. So that's why, like, decursing them, if you're a curse dispelling class, is huge, right? Because they take a curse from Shazzrah that makes them take more damage. And then pre-shielding the melee specifically is typically more beneficial than pre-shielding anybody else, because the odds that he is going to remain in melee by blinking to another melee or just staying there are high, because there's more melee players typically than ranged. And even if there's not more melee players than ranged, there's still more melee players in a single clump usually than in any other clump that you'll have fighting this boss. So that's why I always prioritize melee. They also do the most damage as well, right? So obviously you want to keep them alive. But, and the thing is, they have to be in melee to do damage, like we said. So it's not like as a mage where if you get low, you can just kind of like run away from the boss or something, right? Like, you can't really do that and still be doing damage as melee. So definitely babysit the melee there and work on getting as many pre-shields out before the fight as possible. More lava packs. Where are we going? Sulfuron. Okay. So this boss is, again, this is another one of those bosses where it kind of depends on what you're going to be doing. I like pre-shielding people. As you notice, our tank, Chronic or whatever, has a pre-shield on him, because the first person that's going to make contact, actually, I think it might be Duke's, though, is oh, no, that's him. That's him in the front. Okay, yeah. Because he's got the star on him. So yeah, the first person that makes contact, actually, no, he doesn't have a pre-shield on him. That's a Death Wish. He already popped, I think. I'm not unsure. But pre-shielding in this fight is not bad, because it's actually scary when the first person goes in sometimes. They can take a lot of damage. A lot of times what will happen is, like, one person will, like, basically taunt everything, or somebody will just take the ads, and somebody will take the boss. We kill the boss. Well, everything pretty much just gets cleaved and melted very quickly. But, yeah, I think that's Death Wish that was, yeah. So immediately I'm just, like, you know, mousing over the people who could possibly be tanking, because sometimes people pull threat in this fight too, right? And, yeah, it's basically just pre-shielding, like, your tanks that don't need to get immediate threat, and then you're just watching, right? This guy buffs the ads, right? So if you don't kill the ads quickly, you can end up with this issue where the ads start doing, like, just a ton of damage. I believe he also enrages himself at times. He just gets bigger. So during those times, you obviously want to be watching the tank extra carefully. And in terms of the ads enraging, you know, if one tank is tanking all of them, that's where you kind of have to be careful. So it's going to really depend on your strategy there. Sometimes there's, like, literally an individual tank for each ad. In that case, it's not really an issue at all. You should be able to easily keep them up. But if one tank is, like, tanking all four, or if one tank's tanking all four and happens to also get threatened the boss for a moment, they can be taking a ton of damage. And even the boss just enraging himself can actually do quite a bit of damage. You're not really getting to see him do a ton of damage here, because we just kill him really fast. You can see he's already basically at, like, 2% or something. And he, you know, just didn't really get some good hits off. But he can chain together some strong blows for sure. If you're in a really good guild, you don't see how dangerous this fight can be. It's definitely not. I'm not trying to make it out to be, like, one of the most dangerous, far from the most dangerous fight, but, like, it has the potential to be dangerous if it doesn't end very quickly, right? And people aren't doing a lot of damage, and people aren't kicking, so the ads are healing. Like, if all these things are happening, these bad things, then there's just more chances that he has to hit the tank really hard while he's enraged. So you just want to be cautious of that, right? But for the most part, it's a pretty easy fight. We actually get a Core Hound during this. But he's dead already, so it's not really a big deal. And we just keep on trucking. So yeah. Next run. Okay. Still not Golemagg yet. No, here we are. Okay. So, I think we're pulling right now. Okay, now Golemagg is one of these. I actually don't know if this is. I think this is a pre-shield. Yeah, Golemagg is one of these fights where I absolutely recommend that you pre-shield the tank, because the problem with Golemagg is not only does he hit incredibly hard, right, but his ads also hit pretty hard, and they're enraged at the start of the fight because they're near him. So they have to be brought away from him in order to not enrage, essentially, right? So basically they're gonna completely truck until you get them out of there, and that means that the very part of the fight is very delicate, and it's somebody can die very easily here, right? It can be one of those things where you've done this fight 100 times and nobody's died, but then all of a sudden somebody goes in and gets threatened 3 mobs at once while the core hounds are enraged, and they just instantly splat. So not a hard fight at all, but there can be some crazy burst damage. So what I like to do is the same thing for Garr, where you put the shield on beforehand, so the power word, the weakened soul debuff is faded, so you can immediately recast it again if needed, like during the actual fight, right? So have the pre-shield going in, and then recast again. I like to shield all the tanks, honestly, because you never sometimes know when they're all, because a lot of them they just walk in there and they're trying to take their ad, and if they walk like a little bit too close, if they use like a shout or something like that, or they can easily just get. I've had the off tank get aggro on all 3 before. Had the main tank get aggro on all 3. So it can just be kind of like a crapshoot. So I just like to keep it really safe. Also, a lot of times your warriors are already going to have rage anyway, right? So whenever you see a warrior's like full rage like this, they can absolutely be shielded, and it's not really a problem at all, right? You don't have to worry about the shield component at all there. So yeah, we're starting the fight. We got the pre-shields on, and somebody rip start right away, of course. So this is another fight where you want to be identifying people who are pumpers, right? Because basically this guy hits really hard, Golemagg. So you could see he just swapped Tylee there and just smacked the hell out of him for a lot of damage. And you just want to be ready to react to that, because if he does stay on that target, this guy probably doesn't have his like stone shield and stuff active, obviously, because he's not tanking, right? Which means that he can just get completely blown up by the boss a lot easier. So you really want to be looking out and making sure that you try and keep your warriors safe, because they probably will pull threat. Because the way you have to think of it is like the tank's the ones that have to make sure they get the right mob, and that they're like a lot of times the Golemagg tank will be moving Golemagg back, right, simultaneously as the other tanks are moving the ads forward. So there's less amount of time where the ads spend near the boss where they're enraged. So they're kind of maybe a bit distracted doing that, and the warrior's just tunneling on doing damage, right? And they might open up like almost right on the same global the tank opens up. So you have to be ready to just like react to things like that, and heal them, shield them on the pull, stuff like that. And other than that, though, you are basically just alternating shields and flash shields between the tanks. You basically see it. Again, we have somebody rip threat, AOP, so I'm basically just bouncing between healing our 3 tanks here, which are Coronic, Dukesism, and South Central. It's cancel casting, right? And your melee will take some incidental damage from, I think, like just hitting him, but it's usually not anything that's super crazy. If you need to, you can put renews on the melee. This is actually a good fight for renew, Yeah, but a lot of times the shamans will also be just kind of like, chain healing the melee, or they'll be chain healing a tank that jumps the melee. So your mileage may vary on renew. If you're horde, if you're alliance, renews probably like a lot better, obviously, on the melee. But yeah, so basically just watch the tanks on that fight. Like, the thing is, you don't even have to heal the melee. The worst case scenario, if a melee gets low from like the damage that's being done to them by the Golemagg debuff or whatever, is they just back out, right? And they can bandage or whatever. If they really need to, they let the stack fall off. But the people who really need the healing are the tanks. So if you have like a limited amount of mana, those are the people that you want to focus your heals on. Okay. So we'll go to Domo now. Okay, so Domo is another fight where pre-shields are amazing, because this fight just tends to be like a cluster. And the thing about it is that the boss doesn't hit particularly hard. So it's not like you have a boss like Golemagg that really destroys people. So even if somebody is unable to get like the amount of threat they want on an ad, it's probably fine. Like, even if some other warrior is tanking it, right? As long as like a warrior is tanking the ad, it's pretty much okay. So I just try and get as many shields out as possible on people that I think have a high likelihood of taking damage, which is most of the time the melee. And then you're preparing for anything, right? You want to watch your tank, your assignment, and you're just trying to help on anybody else that you can, because it can get kind of messy very quickly. And basically the ads can do like some AoE damage, like a blast wave and stuff like that. And when you combine that with sometimes people pulling threat, there's a lot of spike damage that can happen in this fight. So we'll just kind of play it through and you'll see. I think we're just currently recovering some mana, and then we're about to pull. Yes, we're capped out here, so you want to be pre-shielding. Something has happened here, I don't know why. Yeah, so we're pre-shielding. You see all the pre-shields going out. We're going in, we get a ton of pre-shields. And sometimes, like, how this fight will be handled is, like, what we do is we do AoE taunts on the ads. So they'll call out in Discord, like, somebody taunt, next person taunt, next person taunt. So if this is how your guild does it, it's actually very easy, because it helps you, all the healers just refocus their efforts. The guy that's tanking now, I think they lip anyway. But sometimes people don't lip in time, or sometimes people don't lip. So it's good to be moused over ready to heal them regardless, right? But you're basically just playing whack-a-mole on this fight. And this is another fight kind of like the other boss, like Gehennas, where when things when there's not like active things that need to be healed, so now there's active things that need to be healed, so we're casting Flash Heal. But you probably saw me cast a couple shields there at the start, or if I didn't, then I should have, because like you want to be preempting the damage here in as many cases as possible, right? So you pre-shield before the boss, and then you're still pre-shielding while nothing is going on during the boss. That way, when stuff does happen, you have a bit of a head start on your raid. So obviously, just trying to pick up the mages here. Just trying to heal who's critical. You want to heal people that have aggro, too, a lot of the times. Because, like, people who are low are people that have aggro, And we're just trying to bounce back between people. And the fight is already over for our guild. But yeah, basically you're just trying to put people's life back as quick as possible. This can be a fight. I find that if you're in a guild that's kind of like mid or mediocre, this is the fight that can like kind of last a while and really tax your mana. There's not many fights, I think, in this raid, as long as you're coming in with a decent raid and world buffs, that really tax your mana that much. Garr can be one of them, depending on the strategy, because if you don't end the fight quickly, the ads are just beating on people for a long time. So Garr is like one of those fights where you may have to transition to casting slower heals as the fight is going on. And it's very similar to what I talked about in kind of like the dungeon video of like when things are going wrong, right? So it's like on the pull for some of these bosses, like Garr, for example, when things are going haywire and everybody's taking damage and things are hectic, you have to be using flash shield and shields, right? Because otherwise these people are going to die. But as things get more under control, right, as you kill more ads on Garr, for example, right, you can now afford to kind of transition to your more mana efficient heals, like your, just normal heal, greater heal, etc. And in this fight in particular, what I actually used to do way back in 2019 when I was playing with a guild that wasn't quite as good is I would actually transition to using renews on people in the later ends of this fight. And this is one of the only fights that I could actually get really good value on renew, because what would basically happen is the whole raid would tap out mana wise, because this fight is just so messy and so chaotic that everybody's just spamming their kind of like max rank flash heals, chain heals, whatever it is, right? Just trying to keep everybody up. And then by the end of the fight, you still have some ads left up and you only have 20-30% mana, but the damage that's coming out is also a lot more controlled, right, and predictable. So you can utilize those things like renew a lot more effectively in situations like that. So just something to keep in mind there is that this can definitely be a mana drain fight, and in these cases, in a fight like this and in a fight like Garr, you do probably want to be switching over to those more mana efficient heals later on in the fight. In this particular video, you're not really seeing that because my guild just kills us so fast. But yeah, like, you really should be looking out for your mana by the end of this in your average guild. I think those are the only fights, really, yeah. So Lucifron shouldn't really be an issue for you. Magmadar shouldn't really be an issue. Gehennas is over too fast. Baron shouldn't really be that much of an issue because there's not a ton of damage going out. Shazzrah shouldn't be a mana issue. Sulfuron, no. Golemagg is the other one, actually, where there's a little bit of potentially a mana issue. But I think as long as you're pretty diligent about canceling your casts and preserving your mana, you're not just wasting mana, by spamming somebody without having any actual effective healing on them. I think as long as you're fairly diligent on Golemagg, when it comes to healing the tanks, you'll be fine. But that can be a fight where he has a bunch of HP, right? So you really do want to make sure you're conserving mana if you're in a guild that's not really that great, right? And you can do that actually by... you saw me, I was mostly using Flash Shield during that fight, but for you guys on Golemagg, if the fight is going to be a bit longer, you definitely can heal the tanks using like heal and greater heal and stuff like that. Right off the bat, again, you probably want to be using shields and flash heals, but once you kind of settle into a rhythm and the damage on Golemagg gets really predictable, you can kind of slot in that, greater heal, normal heal, rank 4, stuff like that to help just extend your mana, basically, right? Make it go longer. Because it can be a scary situation for sure, and he does have a lot of health. So that's Golemagg, so this is, what do you call it? Majordomo. And I would say, yeah, so pretty much just start the fight by making sure people don't die with heals and shields, and then transition to more efficient heals, potentially even renews. And you can even work Prayer of Healing in there sometimes, depending on how you're positioned in your raid, right? So, going to Ragnaros. So this is a fight where, as a healer, I normally don't say you have to pre-pop pots for a lot of these fights, but pre-popping at least a normal fire pot for this fight is really good because the knock is very annoying, and I'm not sure if the pot prevents the knock, but if it does, then you definitely want to use a pot. But even if it doesn't, it's just kind of nice to not have to heal yourself as much after he spams you with his ranged flame ability. So basically, you want to find a spot. If you're healing the tank, you want to make sure you're in range of him. Usually, he's over here. Sometimes what'll happen is you'll have a group of people that are healing over here, and if that's the case, sometimes you want the tank to be. I'm going to actually rewind that for a sec, but you want the tank to be kind of closer to here on Rag. That way, you can heal him from being further away, right? And that gives you more space to space out from the person that's over here. But we don't really have somebody over here for some reason on the chart. So the tank being there is kind of fine. And I want to go back just a moment because I want to talk about what we're doing before the fight and then the actual pull. So before the fight, we're doing the same as all in the other fights as pre-shielding. You'll see I start just casting shields on people right before the fight's about to start. And on this fight, it's really easy to do because, it's very easy to get your mana to close to 100%. You probably shouldn't shield the tank like I did there. I think I meant to shield somebody else, and I just didn't. I think he actually clicks it off, which makes it doubly worse because he clicked it off and took a ton of damage. The thing is, you don't want to pre-shield the tank typically because it's so important for them to get threat in this fight, because if he turns around and hits somebody else with this debuff, he can do tons of damage and sometimes even outright kill them, depending on if he had a thrash or something like that. So you really want to make sure the tank gets threat, and you want to start precasting on the tank right away, because you see right off the rip he just hits our tank for a ton of damage, right? And so yeah, we keep the tank up, and then he swaps threat to our other tank. You can tell if he swapped because of the debuff that gets put on. I mean, you should also just have the boss targeted. But I can see who has aggro based on the raid frame, so it's not really a big deal for me. But if you don't have a raid frame like this, you should absolutely have the boss targeted. So we just cancel casting on the tank. And while we're doing that, we're looking out for people who may have, taken damage. How you want to kind of do this is, if they're below 50%, you want to assume they can be one-hit KO'd by the next thing. So those people are the people that want to be your priority. So you're pretty much cancel casting on the tank, then you see somebody that's really low, you drop a heal on them. When you get knocked like that, you want to get back into your original position as quickly as possible. And the main thing is, if you get knocked anywhere around the tanks, you want to make sure that you get out of there as quickly as possible, because if you get targeted again, you'll send the tanks flying. And then if you get knocked into the melee, you want to make sure you get out of the melee as quickly as possible, because if you get targeted again, you'll send all the melee flying, which is really bad. So again, just huge tank damage on this fight. You want to either have a raid frame that shows you who's got threat, or you want to have the boss targeted so you can see who has threat. You can really have both, right? And you just want to be spamming the person that's taking damage, but you don't want to be just wasting mana still, right? So obviously you want to be cancel casting, but you still want to be, more willing, I would say, to let this cast go through, right? Because this boss is a very hard hitter, and even if the tank is just a little bit not topped, right, you want to make sure he's completely topped, because he can go from 100% to 20% very quickly. A lot of these tanks and a lot of the tanks you're probably going to be playing with aren't using a lot of FR, so they can generate more threat. And that's one of the side effects of not using a lot of FR, is just that the boss will absolutely smack you, because he is meant to be tanked with a decent amount of FR at least. So that is basically the fight, and I don't really think there's much else to cover on Ragnaros or anything like that. I think that's pretty much all the bosses. So yeah, if you have any questions on a specific boss or anything like that, or just a question in general, feel free to leave it in the comment section. If you found this helpful at all, please feel free to comment, and subscribe. I appreciate that. It helps me out. And yeah, just thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helps, and good luck in your raids. And if you're playing hardcore, hopefully you don't die, and this can help keep some people alive. So see you next time, guys.